Let's do it.
What are we doing?
Well, before we get into the episode, do you mind if I just detour us for a second?
No, what are we doing?
Okay, here's what we're doing. For those who don't know, we've started to publish some of our episodes of the podcast on YouTube again.
Yeah.
I don't know how many takes we've had at doing this, but we've gotten like 5 or 6 episodes up. So there's some level of cadence. So if you're into having visual aids, we do card floats on the screen so you can kind of have some kind of visual to accompany what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Go subscribe. Legendary Creature EDH. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been in and out of that space off and on for a number of years, and we just haven't been very good about figuring out how to translate something as long form as what we do into a YouTube experience. And, you know, listener probably isn't super surprised to hear that we're just not very YouTube-ish in our way of communicating. I just don't think we're bombastic enough.
It's
for
true.
It, so.
All right, guys, here's what we're going to do.
But yeah, it's a footprint we want to try to expand through. So Kyle's worked very hard to like create something that's more sustainable for us in terms of putting the podcast that we do here onto YouTube. So they're 1-to-1 as best we can get it. And please check it out.
I know there's clearly an appetite for some people. Different mediums resonate with different people. So there's obviously people who watch us on YouTube and don't listen to us on audio forms. And so they're showing up, but
this is interesting, huh?
If you're,
there's a whole nearly 10 years worth of content buried underneath this glacier of a podcast app they never open on their phone.
Right. So if you are inclined, go subscribe on YouTube, and maybe at some point we'll figure out adding the video to the Spotify feed as well.
Okay.
All right, let's get into the episode. This is an idea you had that I think's going to be interesting. I hope we have some fun with it.
Yeah.
I've been calling it Wrong Turn.
Right.
Where you and I are both going to take a commander that each other has had. We said pre-Ragnarok, so prior to us doing our big roster shuffles.
Mm-hmm.
And building our own deck around a legend that was formerly the others. Yeah.
So I think I got this idea because I recently put together an Erebus the Bleak-Hearted deck.
Yeah. So
and it felt weird getting there because that's not exactly the legend you used for years. You used the original Erebus, like God of the Dead.
Yeah.
But it felt odd because it's that character.
Like this character is Kyle's.
Yeah, it's like his. Yeah, like in your contact ID in my phone is just a picture of Erebus, like the original concept art. You know.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about it, and I'm like, yeah, we've collectively, you and I have scrapped hundreds and hundreds of decks over the course of our EDH career. Some lists I've been jealous of, where I'm like, I like what he did, the way he did it, and to that I wouldn't even attempt this. Like, why? I'd probably do it the same way, and that's kind of lame.
Yeah,
it doesn't help me feel creative, and it doesn't make you feel like just to be on the side of your own thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Then there's some where I'm like, it didn't either work out for you, and I'm not really wrapping my head around it, or maybe it didn't work out for me, and I'm like, maybe you're like, what's wrong? It should just work. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, you and I are drawn to different strategies in the game and different legends, but sometimes there's stuff that I'm wondering about.
Yeah.
So so these are not current commanders that we run. He's not taking one of my lists and just running it through a prism, a Kyle prism, and making it look different. It's something I used to use, so there's some history behind it. I have experience with it, but it's not a current thing.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the same. I think what we should do, like how we should line this up, is you tell me which one you worked on.
Okay.
I tell you how I ran it.
I like that.
The things that I thought were really good about it, the things that didn't work.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you tell me what you did.
Let's do that. I'm into it as a structure
or
for this episode.
Or maybe even also just like your perception as the opponent.
Oh yeah, and we could talk about that as well since we've played these decks. So
okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Do you want to go first?
Yeah. So the one that I took on that was formerly on your roster. I don't think you've brought this back, right?
Mm-mm.
is Glissa the Traitor.
Yeah. Yeah, let's move on. I actually don't want to do this anymore.
You don't want to see what I've done to her?
I don't want to see
You're
it.
like, oh, Kyle, no.
She's like my Anaxuna moon, you know? Like, I put all the gold paint off on her before I went to work. And I'm going to come back and see that her shoulder's a little, like, messed up. And I'm going to fucking kill you. I'm going to bury you with a bunch of scarabs.
You've got, like, a Pygmalion type thing going on here. We have episodes about Glissa. You've talked about her. So there's... But I think this will be a fun exploration to kind of like see what you were doing, where you kind of had landed, and what I've fucking done to bastardize her. So as a reminder to the listener, this is a zombie elf that in order to cast, you need a black, green, 3 total mana value. She's a 3/3 for the power and toughness. She has first strike and death touch.
Yeah.
Potent combination.
Right.
And then reads, whenever a creature an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand.
Yeah.
This already feels weird to like read off what somebody else's commander does. I'm like, I've never read Glissa the Traitor off into the microphone.
I imagine this is like what it would feel like to be like Swingers or something. Where you're like, so what do you and Andy do? Do you want to not do that, or what do you want to try to
kind of the same old, or
what? And like, no matter what they say, it's gonna be fucking awful or hot, depending on who you are. Yeah.
Oh God. What were you doing? You did a few different builds around Glissa the Traitor in your time with this commander.
Yeah, actually, when I first made her, I didn't know how to use this commander at all. I fell into, I became a fan of Dana Roach and his. At the time, it was his podcast, CMDR Central, RIP.
Yeah.
I was really into that because they stuck to the decks they knew, and they would take in like listener submissions and kind of like doctor them. Like they were kind of, I think, one of the first podcasts I heard doing stuff like that, right? Like kind of like, hey, bring us your stuff, and we'll kind of apply our knowledge to it. But his thing is definitely like taking a legend and beating it to death with this set of rules that he's going to stick to and tweak it for years, and that was different. I wasn't like that. I'd make a run at a legend, and if it just didn't speak to me or click right away, I would quickly scrap it. I feel like I still am like that. Like I give up pretty easy, I think, and move on to the next one. And the game has made it easier to do this. I think he's from an era where legends were like, hey, you get 3 a set once a year, and commander decks aren't even a thing. And if they are, they're only once a year also, Yeah. To now, there's just so many legends you can just move on to, right? It's just like a speed dating game. But
God, it's true.
The list he originally, I think, was talking about when I heard it was focused on Death Touch Matters. It was it was all of the black and green best of the witch Death Touch creatures. And at the time, there was zero support for such a thing. There wasn't a guy who gives people 2 poison counters. There wasn't a creature from some Assassin's Creed game that made them bigger. Like there just wasn't anything. And it remains, I think, still one of the best color combinations for that keyword if you want to go for it.
Pretty hot.
So I want the commander. I'm like, that's really cool. I want to try that out. But I made this like bastardization anomaly of, artifacts that matter going to the graveyard, which he was careful to do stuff like that, like cards that draw, cards that ramp, things like that.
Yeah.
And then the death touch creatures. And I think it just didn't work. The first one I built, it was just a do nothing, sit around, do nothing deck. And I hated it. I think we had a podcast where I talk about it just not working.
Oh, that's right.
She's just like not working.
That's right.
It's a long time ago, so maybe my diagnosis is way off. But if I remember correctly, I wasn't really clocking that like you really want low power, low mana death touch creatures, ones that aren't worth removing an instant and not worth attacking into with the big creature. They seem to do the best.
Yeah.
And then also, like, if that's going to be the focus with the creature thing, eventually you need to produce trample and a way to like just overrun your opponents if you're sticking to the death touch matters thing.
Sure.
And getting that balance right of, hey, the ramp and the draw and some of the removal components that synergize very well with Glissa can be in the deck, but the rest should just be these things of aggressively costed but not too threatening death touch creatures, and then some kind of like pressure valve of overrunning them with like a Triumph of the Hordes, which is fucking sick because she's in the art even, you know?
Yeah.
So stuff like that, right? I didn't get that balance right, so I pivoted to an artifacts-focused deck, and it just didn't do well either. I think I picked the wrong battery of artifacts. And then I gave up, and I basically am like, all right, I'm just going to rip his list. Just straight up get as close to it as I can within reason.
Yeah.
And it did a lot better because it was more just kind of like, these are the absolute bare minimum artifacts that matter, and the rest are death touch creatures. And that's that. And I played that for maybe like a year or maybe something like that. And then I'm kind of getting a better sense of the commander, a better sense of what I think I need to be doing as a player.
Yeah.
And I end up starting from scratch and rebuilding the deck from the ground up. And that's when it really got me. Like, I really feel like I found my Glissa deck
like
eventually.
It started to speak.
Yeah, so I just kind of abandoned the death touch matters thing. As much as I love that keyword and I'm wanting something to do with it.
Yeah.
I think it was around Ikoria had come out, and I'm like, I think Burakos is a cooler fit with the death touch synergy.
Yeah.
Where you can basically leap into the creature and give them basically a 6/6 trample death touch. I'm like, that's my thing.
Yeah.
And you can cast it from the graveyard. So it makes it a really annoying creature to block. And all of the other ones that aren't getting mutated into Burakos, they stay back to block for you.
Right,
so
right.
It was a really tight deck, actually, the way Sultai decks could be. But the Glissa deck turned into this really resilient control machine, essentially.
Absolutely.
I took all of the cards that are repeatable and recursive and rebuildable from they go to graveyard, left those in, and took it even further where, like, I'm even going to throw a few artifact creatures in here, or I'm going to do stuff that like that makes everyone sack a creature so I can rip 3 artifacts back to my hand, because it's seeing you guys lose stuff. I had a metal worker from my Derevi days way back in the day when it wasn't super expensive, and it just barely unbanned it. So I had that in the deck where it's like, okay, well, they regrip and I can just burp them out because this thing is like a mega soul ring for artifacts. So the deck was, I think, at its best there.
Yeah.
It definitely leaned very heavily into a control deck. And played it for a while. We got rid of tutors, which harmed it a lot.
Sure.
The big tutor the big nerf that hit the deck is when we said, you can't go search your library for lands like
named lands, like
basically Urborg, Cabal Coffer. So like one of the synergies that she has in her list is that she can do an expedition map twice over. So this Golgari deck really is almost all the time, always a big black mana deck. With just that artifact, right? So it was very potent, being able to almost certainly put that engine together, either because you drew it or because you could go look for it. She also had really good synergy with Crucible of Worlds and any kind of artifact land, and just like there's just a lot of stuff you can do with her. Viridian Longbow is an especially potent card because she can just shoot a creature with death touch damage, thereby killing it, and then pulling another egg back out of the graveyard into your hand. There's a bunch. There's creatures that they sack and they exile an artifact or an enchantment, and they're an artifact, so you can just keep recurring that. Executioner's Capsule is like almost ready made for her. So
it's a top high synergy card on EDH Rec.
So she's a very potent commander. She's incredible. Attrition with her and a couple artifact creatures are a bunch of on an Ornithopter and an attrition with her is pretty wild. So I adore her. I think she's very well fitted. Like she's one of those commanders that has aged very well into the modern game.
Yeah, like her capacity has moved with time.
Yeah, so some have fallen off pretty bad because they don't keep up with the. I don't know if we've said this recently, but like I've been kind of operating under this thing lately of what the modern commander is looking like. You know, the precons specifically. The ones that are just really good for new players and really, really over the top for experienced players are, I'd probably put them in two tiers. I would say, let's say S tier commanders, right? If you know what you're doing with them.
Yeah.
They have some kind of like roadmap to them, you know, to borrow Joey's term, right?
Yeah.
They seem to just solve and they ask and then solve their own problem on their own.
Yeah.
You'll see these in places with precons where it's very hard to whiff what these things are wanting to do.
Yeah.
And they almost like just serve themselves. One that jumps out to me would be like Sauron the Dark Lord. It's just this map of, well, if I do this, then I do this, then I do this, then I do this.
Yeah.
And what this does for a new player is they can rely on their commander to solve a lot of the deck construction pitfalls that would exist for anybody.
Yeah, you know, so if you don't have like your draw or other things balanced, it will balance it for you. It will balance
it out a lot of the ways, right? This is a classic one. It has growing power. It has really stiff protection. The only thing that's between you and a really good game with Sauron is the mana to cast him.
Yeah.
That's really like a lot of these guys.
True story.
Winter from Duskmourn, the Golgari Winter is the guy's just kitted out to do what
it'll get stuff into yard. It'll give you that delirium. Like here you go.
He'll put the delirium online. Like right. Like so, what this does is it makes it so your, you know, to use this term, your slots for your deck are not compressed anymore. You don't always need to run vegetable cards. Like you could tell me that, oh, I run Night's Whisper in all of my decks. Yeah, all right, that's a good card. It's not hooked to anything.
Yeah.
All you need is the mana and the card, and you get the next two cards out of your library and some life, right? But with commanders like this, they make it more and more forgiving to not run those cards. Instead, you can just run bomb pushed green mythic and bomb pushed green mono black mythic from modern whatever. Like you can just play the most pushed cards. True. Right? You can just casually throw in a Breach the Multiverse in because we're in black. Because these commanders, they're funding your game in a way that you might not even realize what's happening. They're asking you to do something, and then they themselves will help you do it, and then they'll give you the reward to do it.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
Like he's a 2/5 death touch, so he's really annoying to block. And when he attacks, he mills you for 3. And then when you end the turn, he does this very charitable delirium trigger that puts a permanent right the fuck into play. Like you don't need to engage in mill largely for that deck.
Yeah.
You could just let him do it and just be cognizant about the color, the card typing, and then just bomb cards. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I put them like really high up there where it's not as simple as card draw. Like if all Winter did was mill you.
No, but the roadmap thing I think is appropriate to say.
He has Death Touch and he's a 2/5. Like he's just kitted out to safely attack nearly the whole game.
Yeah.
Nearly the whole game. And even if they do produce a blocker that can kill him, he'll tear him down with him.
Yes.
You know? So they'll lose their card in the doing of it.
Which is a big deal.
It is a big deal.
Yeah.
So a lot of people often go, I'll just take the 2.
Yeah.
You know, he's designed exactly
2 is
right.
less sufferable than losing your big creature. Right?
Yeah. So it's stuff like that. And then I think a tier down from that would be a resource in the zone, right? Like they produce mana. That's a huge one.
Yeah.
Or they draw you cards. So they do the same thing in a different way in that they repair or it's almost like its own engine. It's almost like you have a dual motor, essentially. You've got the one you always have access to that's going to do the veggie work for you, while the rest of the deck can just be...
I think this is a big piece of... Sorry, I cut you off in your thought. Finish your thought before I get into it.
But you see where I'm going with it, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of commanders, I think, that have existed for years, they can... I think they're starting to have this... how would I say... this like manolith quality to them. At one point, manolith was kind of the baseline of all mana rocks.
Yeah.
You could compare whether it was better than the Manolith or worse than the Manolith.
Yeah.
Darksteel Ingot was objectively better because it was an indestructible Manolith.
Yeah, it just won't go away.
Chromatic Lantern was objectively better Manolith because it did the thing for all of your lands, right?
Yeah.
And then you could say, well, Talisman is better than Arcane Signet's better than Manolith because it costs only 2 mana instead of 3. You say, like some of these older school commanders that used to kind of just like not rule the format, but be used and be trafficked and had a role. They've been Manolithed a little bit.
Yeah, the lines moved on them.
How does this compare against what the company has now decided to design for this format where they didn't before? That when somebody made Glissa the Traitor, they weren't thinking, okay, well, what's this going to do to Commander? No one thought that.
No, that wasn't
the
thing. Thought.
It was just how does she fit into Scars of Mirrodin draft and the standard pool at the time? You know, oh wow, you can get your Wormcoil Engine back to your hand. Fuck. Yeah. I guess. You know?
Yeah.
Like that was the thing. So I think she's aged really well because she kind of works like an inverted version of this. If you get her set up correctly, she kind of says, hey, all of your removal vegetables, as long as they're the type of thing I like, I will let you do it a lot and over and over and over again. In fact, I want you to do it because something needs to die to come back to my hand. So she kind of like inverts what these other commanders are doing, which is let's just go up and over everyone's head, everybody. Let's just go bigger, badder, crazier.
Yeah.
This is the Boros elephant guy that solves all of his own problems because he's a planeswalker, including the need to block, you know, like all of that stuff where she's like, if I build this right, I actually can release the pressure a little bit on vegetables because they're repeatable.
Yeah.
As long as they're kind of meeting the condition a little bit.
But also I think...
And she's 3 mana.
She's 3 mana, and I think one of the big things that's really good is just you can keep your hand loaded if you speak to her correctly, right? Like your hand will always have options in it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's different triggers to watch for, right? Like things leaving your graveyard. If you want to look at that, like there's an enchantment that puts counters on her. And then there's things like Tormod. I don't know, you know.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff to play with.
There's the Necron, other legend that's a Necron. So I think she's aged very well into...
She sees the also contemporary design of other 99 cards really well, because like I think that's the other thing that's pulled her into this as well, right? Is that you probably experienced this when you had her on your roster. There's always new cards for you to consider, right? Like every set has cards that speak to her in some way, shape, or form. And that allows her to continue to have this persistence to be a good commander.
She's crazy, right? Like a Dance Macabre and an Eternal Witness with her, plus some artifacts in your graveyard.
Yeah,
like that's quite a fucking pitch.
Fantastic.
In cards, you know?
Yeah.
And this is a different play style.
You're giving me ideas while I'm sitting here. I'm like, shit.
This is a different play style for people, right? Like the modern commander game, or for a long time, like this is not exactly everyone's favorite thing to go up against is a repeatable removal engine that happens over and over and over again.
Which let's see
they want
if
to just do their thing. So
I'm definitely not treating it exactly the same way you did. That's for sure. Which is the point of this exercise, right? Is for us to do these things differently.
Yeah.
I will say, having played against the versions that you implemented, one of the big things that sticks out to me about Glissa is, I don't think this was a principle that was new to you, but I think it distilled with her, which is the idea of repeatable removal, and like removal engines. And the big one for me was, you mentioned it, was the Viridian Longbow, which gives her a tap ability where she can ping something for damage. And because she's Death Touch, it's gone, right? Like, you having that capacity was a new era for me because I was just like, oh shit. Like, it's not just, well, if I get ahead of Andy, he's got a beast within in his hand, maybe that he might be able to stop my most important piece of whatever I'm doing. It's no, he can remove a creature every cycle, at least around the table. And if he finds some way to untap, here we fucking go.
You're right. Yeah.
And so, like that type of stuff, I think it was really distilling for me about this legend is it changed, I think, the way we had to think as a group about protecting what we were up to or playing around when somebody develops removal engines. And I think it got me into it. I mean, I would say I've, over the years, become much more of a removal engine type person.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I don't even notice, I'm kind of drawn to it because I think you modeled it pretty well with Glissa over the different iterations you've played over the years.
Yeah. And like we said, like there's just cards that directly let you do it with her. So
yeah, I mean, like what you mentioned, this one, like the Executioner's Capsule. So if people aren't familiar with this is the top high synergy card on EDH Rec. It's just a single black for an artifact, and then it has an activation of 1 and a black, tap it, sacrifice the Executioner's Capsule, destroy target non-black creature. So you just always perpetually have this available unless somebody manages to get like a rest in peace out and it just can't hit the graveyard.
Yeah.
Which then you're going to be judicious about what you're doing. And I, as someone who has done that to Andy with this deck, put out a rest in peace, promptly was focused into death.
Yeah.
In that. Do we want to take a look at my list, or do you have some commentary, additional commentary on yours?
I covered it. Let's go.
Okay, so even just in some of the things you mentioned, I'm like, oh, I have some edits I need to go do. Like, I forgot about the fucking map and the Cabal Coffers Urborg thing. And I was like,
forgot about that.
I'm like, oh yeah, like you could always have that online, because I did go with like a presumption of I'm going to use some tutors in my list. Like one in particular that I included was the birthing pod.
Oh yeah, that's incredible.
And so let me set up the theme that I decided I wanted to do here.
Yeah.
So I called this Glissa Battle Bots.
Okay.
My idea that I wanted to run with was I wanted to be more focused on artifact creatures. This strips away some of the like lean, easy to execute stuff that you described doing, where it's just like the low to the ground, Executioner's Capsule type stuff. Like those types of things are less possible with doing the artifact creatures. But what I wanted to do initially when I set out to do this, if you go look at my list, and I may swap these out, is I wanted to see, I've been really interested in fight spells recently.
They're great.
And depending on the wording, there can be some really interesting use cases for this, right? So my thought was that like, you might have a card like Prize Fight that says target creature you control fights target creature you don't control.
Okay.
So maybe I've got an artifact creature in play that it has an ETB or a leaves battlefield trigger, and I want it to fight some creature of yours, and they're both going to die. And so I know that I'm going to get that artifact creature back to hand, and now I've just removed something of yours. So I've just really swapped a fight card for removing one of your creatures and giving myself a treasure token.
Yeah.
And having my artifact creature back in hand so I can harvest the trigger again.
Right.
Or there's the other side of fight cards, where it's less fight and more target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. Yeah. So bite. Turns out when you have a Death Touch commander, bite cards are pretty hot targets as well.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my original thinking, was I'm going to do artifact creatures and these kind of fight bite things. And it's going to be more about me trying to preserve a board state with artifact creatures I'm liking, and I want to have, and then maybe harvesting some extra triggers over time while dealing with other people's problems that are out in play. I will say I may swap this because the alternative, you'll notice I've made a few different maybe categories on my deck list.
Yeah.
I have this maybe board of Forced Death, which is a bunch of instants that say things a la like Soul Shatter. Yes. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker with the highest mana value among creatures and planeswalkers they control.
Yeah.
So in a 4-player game, I immediately create 3 death triggers. And so maybe I've had one of my artifact creatures go to yard, and then I am using for some of I'm planning on some cyclical draw with things like Urza's Bauble or Mishra's Bauble or like the Chromatic Star or the Chromatic Sphere, those types of things that you can, those eggs, Cheerios types things that you can just cycle through and draw cards.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually think I'm going to swap in these like instant speed edicts instead of the fight spells, or maybe do some combination of them, because I do kind of like the bite spells with Glissa potentially as well. That way it's like less, I'm trying to, and I guess let me illustrate my thinking here, is rather than trying to harvest as many triggers off of my artifacts and be as cyclical as possible, it's more, I want to set up a board state that favors me. And if people move to deal with it, I have a way to recover and punish people for dealing with whatever I'm doing. I think that's particularly true with those edicts where it's like, okay, you cast a board wipe and cleared my artifact creatures I wanted to have in play. And so now I'm going to put out Glissa and I'm going to cast Vraska's Fall and reacquire 3 of my creatures back into hand and get started again, like rebuilding. Tell me your thoughts on that approach before I maybe get into some of the details of the cards I'm choosing.
It makes a lot of sense because you can do something like put attrition in the deck, and now all of these artifact creatures are essentially that. Like you've made a control engine out of all the artifact creatures.
Yeah.
And then the other piece is things like with Glissa, in a way, she will do what she does with KCI and Ashnod's Altar if you have a large number of artifact creatures. Like she'll bring them back through, so you can in response drop them and do something with an activated ability, or like there's a lot of just tricky weird artifacts that funnily enough there is an artifact called the Triangle of War. I don't know if you saw it, but it's an artifact that forces a creature to fight, and you sack it in doing it.
Right. I missed that one, so that's one to put in there for sure.
It would basically be an Executioner capsule with fighting, essentially, is what it does.
Okay.
So having moving her into like the new space, I think, like of Modern Commander, I think she actually needs to focus more on artifact creatures these days than doing what she did 5, 10, however many, 6 years ago, where you can rely on the eggs. I think you just need to ride an artifact creature presence more because of stuff like just how they interact. They're better. They're easier to move around.
True.
Like the birthing pod is brilliant because they'll end up back in your hand. Stuff just dies even incidentally. People
and I think that's the other thing.
Around.
Stuff will just die. Yeah. Right. Like that's a cool thing about Glissa.
Yeah. Birthing pod's great with this.
Yeah, I kind of was like, the birthing pod feels like a really good play. And I put in a couple other things like the Diabolic Intent, where it's like, okay, I can sack one of these artifact creatures to just go get whatever I fucking need.
True, yeah.
Or
Eldritch Evolution.
Like the Court of Calling was the other one that I threw in.
Mm-hmm.
Buried Alive, so I can just put stuff into yard, and that card has bitten you, I think, because you've been greedy on one or two of those Buried Alive.
I was greedy with that one,
but it's a real hot pick with her, especially if you're doing artifact creatures.
One of the things I loved about her back in the day was that she was really good against graveyard decks, because one, those people are likely to sacrifice their own shit.
Yes.
And two, Nihil Spellbomb is something that she can just keep recurring and drawing cards off of.
And you draw cards.
And along with Soul Guide Lantern too, dude.
Yes.
Like, she was really good against, she is a one killer of anti-graveyard stuff. Like Carador would just get locked the fuck out with her around.
Because you just keep using your graveyard, but the other people, like, you have all the tools and you want to recycle them, right? Like, which is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I will admit, like, I have been tinkering around with artifact creatures I've wanted to use. These may change by the time listeners are listening to the episode, but some ones that I've been kind of attracted to going across the mana value scale. Like some simple things like the Necropede, where it's just 2 mana for a creature with Infect, and it says when it's put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you can put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. That one you can almost assured that it's always going to end up back in your hand when it dies.
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, so it died. I'm putting a -1/-1 counter on your 1/1. It's back in my hand.
Yeah.
Like, the Hope of Girapur, I thought was kind of a fun one as well, where it's 1 mana, it's a 1/1 with flying. You can sack it, and until your next turn, target player who was dealt combat by the Hope of Girapur this turn can't cast non-creature spells. So leaning into that control thing where, you know, say Andy's kind of doing some spell slinging, I can go over visit him with the Hope of Girapur.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're not casting your non-creature spells.
Yeah.
And something's going to die. I'm going to get this back in hand and I'm going to set that up again.
And make another run at it.
Yeah. I've been because you mentioned kind of being able to sack them, and I've kind of been on the fence of like, do I want to be doing this stuff? Do I not? So one that's kind of made the list right now has been the Arcbound Ravager. So this is 2 mana for a modular 1, so it'll come in with a +1/+1 counter on it. And it says that you can sacrifice an artifact and put a +1/+1 counter on it. And part of the modular, by the way, is that when it dies, you can put its +1/+1 counters on target artifact creature. So you can kind of keep the power present on the battlefield when it goes away.
Yeah, it's a good one. I would do that too.
Let's see. I kind of was thinking like Traxos could be a fun one here as well. So it's a 4 mana artifact, legendary artifact creature construct. It's a 7/7, has trample. It enters the battlefield tapped and doesn't untap during your untap step. But whenever you cast a historic spell, untap it.
He's just going to beat ass, dude. It's
just a 7/7 for 4. Like you can just keep smashing.
If they block, like, or like block 4 of it, and then she sees the trigger and recurs something.
Yeah, like it just felt like a really good inclusion here. The Stuffy Doll is one that I've been kind of toying with here.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard for it to get to the graveyard unless you're sacrificing it. But since it says that you can name a player, and then whenever it's dealt damage, that much damage is dealt to the chosen player. It's better for the fight side of this than if we're doing the edict side.
I would agree. Yeah.
And so if I go with the edict side, it might not be as good of a fit. But I think if you're doing the fight thing, it's kind of a fun inclusion. Some of the more mid-rangey ones, like the Canoptic, there's a lot of them from that Necron deck.
Oh, that Necron deck was a
there's a lot of great cards if you're doing this. So the Canoptic Scarab Swarm, 4 mana for an insect. It's a 1/1. It has flying, and then it has this feeder mandibles. So when it enters the battlefield, exile target player's graveyard. For each artifact or land exiled this way, create a 1/1 colorless insect artifact creature token with flying.
Yeah.
So like you said, like the graveyard hate with a deck like this is spectacular because, you know, it's not going to be hard to make a 1/1 die.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can keep kind of just picking off people's graveyards. The Barbed Servitor is one that I was kind of interested in as well. This is another one that's indestructible, so it might be more of the fight side of things as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of makes an interesting situation. So it enters the battlefield, suspect it, so it has menace and can't block.
Okay.
When it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card and you lose a life.
Yeah.
And then whenever it's dealt damage, target opponent loses that much life. So again, this is more on the fight side if we're going to go that route rather than the edict side. The Wormcoil Engine and the Wormcoil Larva.
Right. Yeah. That's an innovation since I played her.
Yeah. So the engine, of course, has the Death Touch lifelink. When it dies, it leaves behind the 2/3/3s that have either of those. The Larva, on the other hand, is a 3/3 that has Death Touch lifelink, and it leaves behind a 1/2 with Death Touch and a 2/1 with lifelink.
Yeah, they did that one right.
So
how annoying. Yeah.
Kind of fun. Did I mention the Royal Warden?
No, I didn't mess with this. I was wondering about this.
Yeah, so it's a 3 black for a Necron. It's a 3/2, and it has Phalanx Commander. So when it enters the battlefield, create 2 tapped 2/2 black Necron Warrior artifact creature tokens. It has Unearth, so if you find yourself not in the position to use Glissa, it can kind of get another run at it itself.
Okay.
This is a card that you're not going to be able to see, Andy, but it's called the Big Mother Mouser.
Okay.
It's 4 mana for a robot. It's a 0/0. This creature enters with 2+1/+1 counters.
Oh yeah,
on
my
it.
screen is like just glitching out. I can't. You're gonna have to just keep reading.
Yeah. So whenever this creature attacks, double the number of +1/+1 counters.
Too, dude. Like I got like a weird earache all of a sudden.
And then when this creature dies, create a number of 1/1 colorless robot artifact creature tokens equal to the number of counters on it. So, yeah, for those unaware, it's from another universe.
It's from a different timeline.
Where did that even fucking come from? I mean, there's a lot of different things. Oh, one other last one I wanted to mention. I didn't have this in here until recently, was the Mirror Battlesphere. This one's really sexy to me in this context of sacking your shit off, because you can set up more and more mirror
and then
for it to tap into
and
itself.
The damage gets higher.
Yeah. So I'm like, it's just going to be so sexy to do that one. If you can pull it off, it's going to be mana intense. I probably need to have the Cabal Coffers Urborg play in here to make this shit fucking happen. I don't know about the mana production that I have in this current list. This is where I feel like it's going to get, like, it's going to need refinement if someone's building this list.
Okay.
Because I've kind of got a mixture of, like, I'm not leaning into what green does at all. I'm not tutoring lands into play currently. I'm really trying to lean into, well, I take that back. I am using the Horizon Spell Bomb, but that doesn't tutor them into play. It just keeps you on curve because you can draw
it's
along
slow
the way.
Too, yeah.
And it's slow, but it's something that's here. It's a 4 mana cycle to get a land into hand and a card into hand to do that, right?
Yeah.
We've got some of the discounters like the Foundry Inspector and Joyrus Familiar, giving our historic or artifact spells some cost reduction. Using some of the like mana rocks that you can sack and draw, like the Mind Stone.
Yeah, that's savvy. Because
they kind of seem to fit. And then stuff like the Solemn Simulacrum, because we can do some stuff with Glissa here.
Okay.
But then there's stuff like the Mycosynth Golem.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I don't know if this fits when you're doing artifact creatures, because can you produce a volume enough, even though it directly says it will discount your artifact creature spells and giving them affinity.
Right.
It's 11 mana. It has affinity for artifacts, but can you get enough low curve stuff in to justify its play? When I was goldfishing, it felt iffy.
Yeah.
It feels like if there's a deck you can do this with, maybe it's something here, but it felt iffy with the artifact creatures I've chosen to do this. A card that I'm really into lately is the Warring Triad. I've just been trying to slot this different places.
Oh, the mana rock. Yeah.
To figure out where to do it. So it's a 3 mana legendary artifact creature god. It has flying, trample, haste. It's 5/5, but it says as long as there are fewer than 8 cards in your graveyard, it isn't a creature, but it has tap, mill a card, target player adds 1 mana of any color.
How does that compare to a Manolith, dear listener?
Yeah, right? That is on the other side of that fucking line. I found in my gold fishing, because of the triggers I was able to harvest, I didn't usually meet that 8 card threshold in my graveyard. But I still think it's a pretty fucking good card.
High. I mean, like, even trying to get threshold is tough with decks that don't like self-mill for it.
Yeah, it mills, so you might hit some stuff that you want to be able to just, it's a little bit of card advantage along the way.
Yeah.
I like this card probably more than I should, but I think it's really cool. Another one from that Necron deck, from the 40k deck, is the Illuminor Caesaros.
Xeris, or
you can tell me if I'm not saying that right. 2 and a black. It has tap, sacrifice another creature, add an amount of black mana equal to the sacrificed creature's mana value.
Pretty cool. It's like a Soldavi Adnate, but an artifact itself.
Yeah, exactly. It's an artifact itself. Seems to fit in pretty well. So I'm not positive that this mana construction I have for this deck is quite right. But there's stuff you can do besides doing your traditional green shit, which is what is so cool, I think, about Glissa and just messing around with artifacts. Is usually when you're playing a green-black deck, you kind of feel like you can just keep doing all the traditional like green bangers to get your mana developed. But there's something else here to work with, for sure.
What's the land count in this?
I have it currently at 37.
Okay.
I think it probably needs to come up personally, is kind of where I'm at.
Okay.
Removal gets fun as well. You can do some of the stuff that Andy described. That's just kind of recursive that you can do with her. I was interested in some of the things like Armix is a pretty good fit here.
Yeah.
So Armix says that when it attacks, you can discard a card, which you're not going to be hurt by because you can just discard an artifact. When you do, target creature defending player controls gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of artifacts you control plus the number of artifact cards in your graveyard.
Oh, you're making me miss Bay.
You will not miss that card you discarded. It will immediately come back to your hand.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just this repeatable thing. Yeah, it's on combat with Armix, but whatever. And if Armix dies, they block Armix. Okay, well, it's an artifact. You'll get it back.
Yeah.
It's not going away.
Just be smart about your attack too. Like, you can make it work.
Yeah, you can make it work. Arcbound Condor.
Amazing.
2 black for an artifact creature bird. It has modular 3, so it's going to come in with 3 counters, and you can leave those behind for something else. Whenever another artifact enters a battlefield under your control, target creature and opponent controls gets -1/-1 till end of turn.
Just 5 mana dork. Oh, let's bring that back too.
Cool, dude.
Yeah, it's a really good pick.
The Necron Deathmark.
Yeah.
So this one has flash, so it's 3 black.
There's 2 really fucked Necrons that come out of that deck for her. Yeah.
So this one has a Synaptic Disintegrator. So when Necron Deathmark enters the battlefield, destroy up to 1 target creature, and target player mills 3 cards. So you can set up your yard a little more.
Stop. Yeah.
And you get something to your hand as well.
And they'll blush and they'll be like, oh, you dirty dog. It flashed, dude.
That's so man.
Cool. Because like whatever's in your yard will come back. Like, sure, you get the mill, but like if there's something in your yard, like, okay, I'm going to get this back. They don't know I'm going to get it back. This gets flashed in before your turn.
Right.
Nuke something. You mill 3. Cool. But
then
you
set up something for later.
You grab the thing you're after. Like, yeah.
It's pretty cool. A nice play for when people like, oh, we got to get that fucking, like,
you name it.
Yeah, whatever fucking artifact. Like, we got to stop him doing the worm coil engine cycle.
Just
like,
you name it.
Like, well, I'm going to bounce the worm coil engine back to hand off of my fucking Necron Deathmark play.
Don't you see her, dude? Do you see her now?
She's fucking great. I have not optimized this because it's not the realm I typically function in.
Yeah.
But you can see that, like, I think the idea is distilling here with what I'm trying to piece together, and it'll improve as I tinker. Noxious Gearhulk, classic. Just keep fucking doing it, right? I want to actually come back to the mana a little bit and ask you about a couple cards.
Okay.
Because I had the Tanuki Transplanter in here.
That's a new one to me.
So it's 3 and a green. It's a 2/4 for an equipment dog.
Okay.
It has reconfigure, right?
I'm listening.
So when Tanuki Transplanter or equipped creature attacks, add an amount of green equal to its power until end of turn. You don't lose mana as steps and phases end.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, if we can get out Traxos and reconfigure the Tanuki Transplanter onto it, that's a lot of mana to turn that around.
True.
But you're going to get a lot of mana on the other side as well.
This is a painfully Brad card right here. Where
it kind of is,
where
right?
It's 4 mana, 3
mana to reconfigure.
To reconfigure. Otherwise, it's 4 mana to get 2.
To get 2.
It is a 2/4. It has no evasive characteristics. If it dies, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I mean, you can pop it back to hand because it's not too risky.
I guess, yeah. But this is absolutely a card that like no one would do anything about, and Brad does the most abusive thing with it.
Yeah,
So I don't know. I never know a shit.
It's
like
one
this.
of those cards where I'm like, I want to try it out, but I can also see games where it does. I just spent 6 mana or 7 mana to do nothing with it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Reconfigure. We have kind of learned from Brad.
It's great.
How fucking awesome it is that it just sticks around.
Is so it's so good.
It's really fun. The other one in here that I put in was Karn Legacy Reforged that I actually want to get your commentary on this. So it's 5 mana for, of course, legendary artifact creature Golem. Its power and toughness are equal to the greatest mana value among artifacts you control. So if we're running these kind of, I mean, it's at least a 5 for itself, right?
Yeah.
At the beginning of your upkeep, add
It's a Blink Moth Urn that's one-sided.
Yeah, add colorless to your mana pool for each artifact you control.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
Okay.
For this.
I know I was kind of like, it fits at such a weird mana range, at 5, but.
Yeah, you could, this is a good, you're going to have if you have a lot of artifacts that have come back to your hand, this is a great way, right? To empty them back into play, Yeah.
Okay. I wanted that. I was like, am I fucking crazy? Like with stuff like that, because it defies your traditional ramp concepts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not ramping you from early game to mid game type of a play. It's the type of play you just described. You've reacquired a bunch of artifacts and you need a way to get them back in. So anyways, okay, I'm going to stop. That's covered a lot of what I've put into this deck, but I by no means, dear listener, I by no means think that what I've presented here is entirely refined.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the exercise of you and I stepping into each other's space
and
seeing what we can do.
That was the point.
And I feel like there's something here, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like I'm not doing what Andy was doing. I'm not doing what you were up to, but it feels like something I could bring to the table and figure out.
Yeah. I suspect you steered away from it for 2 reasons. And by what I mean by what I was doing is something that's recursive, like notably absent is Executioner's Capsule.
Yeah, I didn't do those things.
Because I'll take a guess. It's kind of deflating for your opponents to just see this thing go on.
Yeah.
That's a game plan I'm comfortable doing. I don't have a lot of, I guess, empathy for. I have big stuff. Don't do anything, decks. I'm not ready to like let metas go in that direction.
True.
So
to be fair, I have 13 fight spells in here.
You do. So to me,
stuff's gonna die.
Yeah. So to me, like somebody could come in here and be like, essentially because of the density, like the decks aren't radically different. One is just demonstrating something recursive,
right?
And that I think is what makes her so appealing, is that you can do the recursive stuff and then start adding goofier artifact creatures, or whatever, and like curve through it.
Yeah.
But then when you do hit these like recursive things, it's stickier and harder.
True.
So you're able to save slots. That's like my huge
a good point.
thing, is like connecting things together. It just helps a ton.
It is a tight list
for me
to say. I will say it right now. That's kind of where I was like, I think I actually might want to switch or do a combination of the Edict instance, because it's tight trying to piece all of this together.
Yeah. I adore Glissa. I do. I want to bring her back around, but I think the roster my roster isn't ready for it. I don't think I have a space for it. I'd have to let some other stuff go. Like I just have too many decks that are doing stuff like this I'd have to retire some.
Yeah.
Because I play a variety. Like, I'll choose when I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going underneath these guys, or I'm going to try to go over them.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to try to go somewhere where something different, I don't know. Like not all of my lists are this set up to control like crazy, but I tend to really not like watching some green player just get the fuck off. I really don't like it.
Absolutely.
And then finding that their whole game plan is I've got to control my commander.deck or it comes to pieces. And it's like, okay, well, this is clearly a vulnerability I've exposed because, or they don't have removal themselves, because often recursion usually comes from a permanent, like I can't recur stuff usually without something out there for you also to get rid of.
True.
And when it collapses for me, that's a lot of power you've taken out of my deck, because that is the power of the deck. So now you've kind of weathered this storm-ish of, okay, well, he's trying to go underneath me with all of this stuff, so he can't go over me usually. So my life total is probably safe for longer than I think it is. Like no deck can do everything.
No.
So I adore Glissa because she has these crazy things that you can do, like because they come back into your hand, you can give her like Hand of Vecna and she can get freaking big because the artifacts end up in your hand.
True.
And no one's really clocking that. Like,
true.
A bunch of creatures die and you're like, okay, well, I've got 13 cards in hand.
That's
Why? Well, I can't get these artifacts out, so Like there's just
another
weird
thing
stuff.
that's cool about her.
And the
is
artifact itself is hard for them to remove. Like she actually has a pretty cool relationship with equipment even.
It's true.
Not that in my experience, equipment ends up in the yard as often as it should. And actually it kind of survives. Like it's a pretty resilient card type because people just kind of deal with the creature holding the equipment before they deal with the equipment. There's a lot of things you could do with her. She just does have that unfortunate thing in her where she's basically signaling that removal is what she cares about. She's not enough.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Stuff's going to have to die.
Those other characteristics are great, but like I don't think it's enough for her.
Yeah.
To carry a modern game of Commander.
No,
I just don't.
Stuff's got to die.
And plus they've modernized her design, right? Like there's another version of her Sun Slayer who is card draw and removal.
True.
In the zone.
True.
So that carries things better. I think what has aged well with her is her relation to artifacts. Like I noticed you put things in here where artifact creatures where you're like, hey, I'm going to put Morbid Opportunist.
Yeah.
Like they're not artifacts, but they're card draw for something that's just going to happen. Passively.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. Like you have to step away.
Yeah. Like I was like, I'll make some exceptions. And that was one where I'm like, that makes a lot of fucking sense.
Yeah. This side of the podcast is a massive Glissa fan. We've done a lot of episodes about her. We did a pre-con episode about her, dear listener.
Yeah.
Where I kind of make a budget version and sell it to you. So if you want to look that one up, you should. It's a really cool commander.
It's funny. It was the two that I was thinking about were this one or Atris were kind of the two that I was like.
Atris. You would make a very Atris would speak right to you, right?
Yeah.
Like you're gonna be like, I know what to do here.
Yeah.
I'm flickering him. Like I could completely leave this entire package out that he wants to do and just go this other direction, and it would be potent.
So, anyways, maybe that's another episode we could do later. But
if this is something you like doing, the swinger thing.
All right, let's hit the one you got.
Yeah. Okay. So I have been unable to break into the group slug. Me and Kyle call it pressure, right? Before that term was coined, I think that's what we were calling it. And we're out of the loop space for a while. I think it's something that you have dominated for years.
Highly attracted to.
Yeah. So like the first time we saw a pressure, so just to kind of to reassign and put this back out. Pressure group slug is game actions are allowed, but they're taxed in the form of life or cards. Namely, discard is Kyle's avenue a lot of the time, or both. It's not quite a stacks deck in that it denies people the ability to do anything.
Yeah.
It kind of says you can do it, but it's going to hurt to do it. The primary color, I think the one that is best married to the strategy is black and then red, and they're very close.
Yes.
I think when you deviate from those two or both, you run out of a lot of options. You start veering towards the word hate bear. So it is, to reiterate, it is not interested in limiting game actions or making specific triggers not available, like things coming in tapped or artifacts can't be activated, blah, blah, blah. That would be a hate bears or a stacks strategy.
Yeah.
That is not what pressure or group slug is. It's, hey, you can draw as many cards as you like, but you're going to lose life when you do it. Every time you activate an artifact, you lose life. Every time you tap a land, you lose life. Things like that. They're difficult decks they're not difficult to make. There's a battery of cards that exist that watch these activities in those colors, specifically Rakdos. We've seen the first one we ever saw was Mogus, God of Slaughter.
Yeah, Brad was a Mogus player.
Then we had this kind of revelation with Erebus where it was like, gone is the red stuff like Sulfuric Vortex and Mana Barbs, but in is just Erebus himself, a card draw source and a life block.
Yeah, you cannot
gain life, so it's one directional, and that proved to be, I think, the more potent of the two that did that.
Yeah,
we've seen it with your Klothys deck. We've seen a bunch.
Yeah,
at one point, you built one with Liesa.
Shroud of Dusk.
Shroud of Dusk. So to remind the listener, Liesa is one of Avacyn's sisters, right? She's the goth sister from among the bunch. She's 5 mana for a 5/5 legendary creature angel. Rather than pay 2 for each previous time you've cast the spell from your command zone, you may pay 2 life that many times. She's flying, she's lifelink, and she has, whenever a player casts a spell, they lose 2 life. So my recollection of your deck was it was Orzhov Pressure. It had...
I did 2, actually.
You did
but
2.
You're right.
But there was a variety of it where it was things are happening, people are losing life.
Mm-hmm.
That was a version of it. And it makes sense because she's ready to do that. She's like a really ramped up Mogus in a way. Mogus is just like, hey, lose 2 or sack a creature, which you lose 2. What was your other build for her?
I did an Anthems build with her. So I was kind of more focused on you can kill her, but she's going to keep coming back and she's Anthems and haste.
Yeah. So that also sort of tracks, right? Because she's so good, right? A 5/5 for 5 flyer that doesn't have any commander tax in the form of mana.
And has lifelink, so you can...
And she has lifelink.
You can reacquire the life you paid.
So the Anthems start paying off the life commander tax that you've paid, and then there's probably a version of this where you're like, fuck it, I'll just do Skullstorm. The first version was Pressure, correct?
It was.
It turned into the Anthem, and I'm guessing because she is a really hot target.
Absolutely.
People really, really don't suffer her to live. Erebus is difficult to remove. It's a specific subset of cards that can get him.
Yep.
And then there's another subset of cards that can only get him when he's devoted. So he was honestly a really tough commander. You want to talk about legends that have aged pretty well into the modern commander space.
True story.
Some of the Atheros gods, I think, have like very, very well. They are very safe to get into the battlefield.
Yeah.
And so he's got a lot going for him, and he's card draw in the command zone. So he relieves an enormous amount of slot pressure.
Absolutely.
By that fact alone. And he's similar. He's like, hey, I'll tax you for card draw, where hers kind of just goes nowhere, right? You're paying the taxes to keep her afield for the hope of her draining people's life, for the hope of being able to either block safely with her or attack with her to get the life back. So I think it makes sense if you're looking at her as a pressure deck, and it seems like that is what everybody is doing. Like Cabal is like one of the top cards for her, Cabal 1.0.
Yeah, console allocation,
But we just push her away. She's easy to remove, and we can force you to pay the tax higher and higher and higher, and really just shut down that lifelink and put it so far behind. So you came back with something else. You're like, well, if that's what's going to happen,
I'll just
do the Anthem.
I'll just add like the problem with that I experienced, because you're right. People you can't plan around what's going to come out of my hand as well as you can what's going to come out of the zone, right?
Yeah.
So like she started to become a distraction for my mana because she's really good, a 5/5 lifelink blocker
that can do heaps of life loss if she stays around.
Yeah, if she sticks around. So she is a really good pressure group slug.
There's a version of this where I shoot 3 spells, lose 6 life, and then you attack me right after that.
Right.
So like I've lost 11 life from this one card.
So like if you have an option, you really do want to have her in play. But what it does is it means you're not developing your other group slug components.
Right.
And that's what I bumped into is it's like, I'm not paying the commander tax, but she still is 5 mana, which means I've got to get up to like 10 to recast her and develop another piece of my group slug melange, like it became really difficult because if you've ever played group slug, there is a dance that people can play around it. Like if they can get themselves to where their life total's above you, that's really the critical component.
Yeah.
Like if they can get themselves there, which you're having to pay life to recast your fucking commander.
And she tangos well with this because of the life link, but
you might find yourself in the position where like, God damn it. Like I've got Brad and Andy below my life total, but Cam is stubbornly staying above mine. And so that's why I pivoted, was because I'm like, I know the pressure stuff works, but with her, there's just this temptation to always use her. But if people are on top of her, you can't develop enough of your other stuff to win.
Yeah. I've wanted a pressure deck for a long time. I feel like it's a fun way to play where people are just losing life for doing the thing.
Yeah.
It has a kind of a warping effect on people's brains, right? They'll go, let's attack him, gang. Hooray. And they do, because your life total staying ahead of theirs just because the things you're likely punishing are the actions they're taking more than you.
Yeah.
And there's stuff that's just asymmetric. Like, Underworld Dreams doesn't punish you. It punishes the opponent. So they're a cool deck strategy. I've liked them since I saw Mogus, Brad's first version of it, but they are really, really hard to pilot because in the end, it's just not enough. Like little amounts of damage and damage like that, even if there's huge heaps of it, people find a way out and creatures do more damage than enchantments do.
It's true.
They just fucking
fucking true.
No enchantment is ever going to do double strike, whatever. I mean, a Duelist Heritage with this chick down is 10 damage. How many pings? Like, it's just, yeah. So creatures can always outwork somebody. When everyone has a mind to use their combat steps on one opponent, they don't have long before they're out of the game.
And there's cool plays with her, like the hatred play, right?
Yeah, any kind of life
because she's a lifelink, and so you can just ace somebody.
Yeah. So my perception of her was that, and then I also kind of like surveyed some of my like other players of like, do you remember this? So Cameron was one, and Cameron was like, I couldn't handle that he could get his life total above everybody else out of nowhere.
He was one of the people on top of it.
He was like, the way to double manage it was to shove her back to zone because then because it's not an option. Like, you have to pay the life to get her out.
Yeah.
To shove her back out and then watch him lose, because you lose life even on your own spell. Yep. She sees your own ass too.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of incentive for your opponent to zone her.
Yeah.
There's a ton of incentive to do it. Leaving her out, you get life. Leaving it out, they lose life. Putting her at zone, you lose life. Like, there's just too much.
Yeah.
So my card reads, destroy target commander, target opponent loses 2 life. Destroy target commander, target opponent, that opponent's controller loses 6 life, 4 life, 6 life. Like, it's just, you're adding too much value to zoner.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, how do I do this? Because I think she's sick as fuck, dude.
She's such a cool character, like such a cool card.
So I kind of abandoned the whole pressure idea. There's this thing that we do where we take what Commander does and we just do more of what Commander does.
Yeah.
And sometimes it makes a lot of sense because, and I would even support that it makes sense with Liesa, because if she's zoned or God forbid bugged or God forbid in prison or in the moon, you have cards that see people losing life and they call back to that, right? Like, I would fully expect you to have something that has somebody losing life, and you gain from that or something, right?
Yeah.
So there's a portion of your deck that synergizes with opponents losing life, and if she's not online and if she's your only source of that, then you're going to be in trouble when we manage it or tax it out or compress you into a corner. So it kind of makes sense to have Kumbal in the 99 because he does something similar with non-creature spells, right? But there's also this thing of like you're approaching. I don't want to say the word win more, because like win more is you've won, which to me is either true or false thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, you've either won or you haven't. So like when people throw out win more, I'm always kind of wondering, like, is this I actually won or I just won faster? I don't know, right?
Yeah.
I would say this is just like overachievement, I suppose. Like,
I can see that.
Like, if the only thing that you get out because your game has just been hosed by us managing her is, I don't know, Painful Quandary, I don't think it's going to carry you. That ain't going to land your airplane, dude.
Yeah, that was the problem I confronted, right?
Yeah, I've seen Painful Quandary make games painful and difficult, but I can't really say I've seen somebody win.
Somebody lost because, like, I can't discard. So.
I've seen people win with Warstorm Surge, which is about the same mana cost and the same type, the same permanent.
Fucking story.
So there's stuff that's like, these are really good. I've seen people really take over games with Sunbird's Invocation. I've seen people live way too long because of a goddamn Ghostly Prison or Authority of the Consuls. I've seen that.
Yeah.
But I can't say that, like, on its own, and it never met any other connection, a Painful Quandary has done a lot.
Yeah.
So it's just, you're working.
It's one of my favorite cards.
Oh, it's hands down one of your like signature cards. But like, you gotta be. But you're right. You gotta be real with me.
You're
dude,
right. You're totally right.
So like, if they made Painful Quandary a creature, I don't think it would have the same effect as the Warstorm Dragon the Exquisite Blood Vampire.
It's true.
I think it'd be neat, but I don't think people would be like, holy fuck, dude.
You're fucking right.
So I just kind of abandoned the pressure idea because I'm like, I don't know how to make. I tried to make it work. And I think I just kept landing in the same space of they're just too incentivized to shove her back.
That's what I found out, man.
Yeah. So I just completely eschew the use of her. I think if you get her out, great. I'm not ramping to push her out soon, which is another thing I kind of wanted to touch on with this deck.
Okay.
So like, I've been kind of really not into signets the last few months.
Oh yeah.
I've had an on and off relationship with Artifact Ramp, and I've been dialed in with the zeitgeist about what people say on YouTube and on their TikTok and whatever. And I don't know if I align exactly with what some guys are saying. I wish there was a way, and I really hate talking about land count and mana on this podcast because people are
people think differently.
They're like religious mathematicians about it. Here's what I'll go for, and this is just my experience lately. Okay.
Yeah.
There are phases of the game. This is not a new thing, right? This is something that like has been on and off talked about for years. That they call quadrant theory. There's a podcast I like called My Mythical Meta where they go over quadrant theory pretty well. I would check them out, dear listener. And they relate it more to Commander. It works fairly well in terms of just thinking about a game in isolation, right? It doesn't usually play like this in my experience, but one of the things I struggle with as a player and as a deck builder, and you can tell by the way I make my decks, is I for some reason in my headspace I can't envision player 2 and 3. I can only envision player 1, opponent 1, and myself. You see?
Yeah, like you can think of like, well, this is how Kyle would play.
This is or I need cards to deal with what Kyle's been up to lately.
But it's really hard to think about like, I know Kyle would do this, but in response to the circumstances between me and Kyle, Brad would do that.
Yes.
Like that's hard to calculate.
I can't do it. I can't do it, right? When I goldfish decks, I'll simulate board wipes. I'll be like, okay, well, there's no way this board sticks. I'll just put it all in graveyard.
Yeah.
And let's see if I can bounce back from that. And I'll do that a couple times. So I do my deck testing where it's like, is this running?
Will it just go?
Will it get up the hill, and will it get up the hill with interference? And if I can't get past that, I'm like, this deck is not resilient enough, or something's wrong, or I don't know. And sometimes I just choose to go, okay, well, this is the deck. It feels too good the other way. It doesn't happen every time.
Sure.
Go, right. Anyway, the quadrant theory to hit it very some like this is just kind of how I wrap my head around it. There is everyone's setting up, everyone's at parity. Listener is behind, listener is ahead. We'll say that. Yeah. Okay. So setup is the most relaxed part of Commander, right? This is where all of us cowardly players who don't play 1v1 formats like to hang out. I'm doing a bunch of innocuous things, and as long as I don't play anything from Modern Horizons 3, no one's going to get mad. I play my Signet, whatever, right?
Yeah, here's my Arbor Elf.
Yeah, and so it's just stuff that like just goes out being passively cast, right? The swords here, swords, sort of the Animist, whatever. And then randomly, somebody will throw something out that rises above this, right? So whatever. The other thing is that everyone's at parity. Now, I don't know what parity looks like in a 4-player Commander game, but to describe it loosely is it's not obvious who is ahead of everybody else.
Yeah.
And either a few members are behind or whatever, but it's really hard to say who is absolutely at the top.
Sure.
Those are the two states that I think people share together. The other two are it's individual now, right? Either Andy's ahead or Andy's behind. Either Kyle's ahead or Kyle's behind. Either listener's ahead or listener's behind, so on and so forth. And what that looks like can look like I have only lands and no permanents.
Yeah.
I'm top decking. I have no lands. I've missed too many drops. So however you would characterize you being behind, it would look different. It could be all of my stuff's happening, and in the face of what these guys have done, it doesn't actually matter. I'm still behind.
Right.
I'm still doing what I need to do. It just doesn't match what they've done. And I actually don't think that happens as that often, right? Now you're just outclassed or something.
Sure.
Like my deck is doing its maximal best, and it still does not.
It's still behind you.
It's still behind them. It's not a resource problem. It's not a draw acquisition or draw exposure problem or whatever. And then there's the stuff where it's like I'm ahead, right? Where it's like clearly I'm the guy that needs to fucking die. Clearly I'm the guy that's setting the pace of the game. Clearly I'm the guy who's marching toward, I'm closer to the finish line than everyone else. I am the Koopa shell target.
Yeah.
Banana doesn't help.
Yeah.
Or banana's the only thing I can do, right? Koopa shell doesn't help me. So you see?
Yeah.
So if we just only focus on a signet here, that's the only thing I want to talk about for a minute. The signet doesn't do well in all of these quadrants, to my mind, on its own. I'll provision in a second, but on its own, right? If in setup, that's the best place for it. That's where everyone sees it. That's where everybody resolve a signet and a talisman. That's where everyone do it. Is it set up? It sets you up. It sets you up for an accelerated turn. I play 2 lands and I have
in that space you're keeping up with everyone else.
Yeah, it's the artifact best imitation of a double land play, unless we're talking about Sol Ring, which is a radically different card. I'm not even going to bring it up in this conversation, right? That's where it's best. If everyone's at parity, it's kind of okay. It sets you up to be ahead of everyone else. If no one else a signet, and if everyone else has reached their last land in their hand, you're now 1 mana ahead. Mm-hmm. So I think you've broken parity, I think, in a way, with a signet. That's a really weak break. You're barely away from the peloton that is the group of people that are moving, but okay.
If everybody has a curved play, your curve is just a little ahead.
Bit curved ahead. And whether you can capitalize on that, that's a radically different conversation also, because if you end up using all your signets and you have a land untapped and nothing to do off your turn, like, I don't know. Didn't matter too much. If you're behind, I don't know, man. Drawing signet, casting arcane signet, it doesn't feel good. You'll have people go, well, I don't know, I can't do anything. I guess I'll just arcane signet and pass. That's what people will say, right? Fuck, I'm just not drawing what I need. Talisman of Indulgence, pass. And that's that, right? You're behind, and this isn't helping you get out from being behind. Yeah. If you're ahead, you won't even notice that they're in your hand. You're going to cast everything else that's been rummaging through. If I'm completely loaded up with everything that makes, let's say that Glissa deck hum and fire, it ain't a signet among those. It's just not. If I'm ahead of everybody and I want to stay the fuck ahead and keep hitting the boost because it's not over yet, I need to get to the finish line by either acing somebody or, moving into an infinite if that's the meta or whatever. Right. It's not helping me here, right? So does this mean that signets are bad? No, I'm just exposing like the limitation of the card. All cards have these limitations. If I am a big lover of board wipes. It doesn't do to board wipe when you're ahead. It's a big mana dead card on arrival. If I have the primo board state, you're not using it. This is just something occupying a dragon shield sleeve is all it's doing in this moment. So, and in setup, it won't kill anything.
It just wrote a little sticky note
and
shoved
parity,
it in
I don't know what
sleeve.
I'm doing. I guess I'm just making the game go longer. It only really works in that one quadrant, but you will never see me take board wipes out of my decks. Yeah. So I'm not, this isn't like a case exhibit A against using them. I'm just trying to expose what relying on them does. And then here's the other piece I want to say, right? To get them to work, I think best if we're just talking about, well, I want them in the opening phase then. Okay, you've convinced me, but that's where I want them. You need a lot of them then. You need a great many of them to get 1 or 2. You really are playing a game of roulette with your deck. It is a game that's just up to chance. I know we delude ourselves into thinking that's not how it goes, but like the variability and all that, whatever, it's like if you need it in the first phase and that's where it matters because you need to power out your commander, then that's where you need a high volume of them. So your biggest guaranteed mana-free draw is the one that you start the game with. So that's where it's likely to get hit, not behind mana barriers, not behind some other card that draws the card. You want it in that first draw. Yeah. So now a good chunk of your deck needs to be just this mana acceleration / color fixing, which I think is not a real reason to run them these days.
Not in this era.
Not in this era. So you need a lot of them. Yeah. So now this problem reveals itself even worse to my mind. If a good chunk of your deck, let's say 10 to 15% of your deck is just these signets, then when you're ahead, what are they doing for you? If you're behind, what do they do? You're going to hit a lot of them at the wrong time.
Yeah.
A few of them, So I don't know where
it's a conundrum because you don't want to not do it because other people they are going to play ahead of you if they have it in their opening hand.
It's scary,
right? Like you don't want to be left behind, but then by the other token, these other quadrants that you're describing, they're not useful in those.
It's scary. It's scary to watch people power shit out with their signets. It is a very effective play to land them on that first phase of the game. I will 100% agree with anybody who's screaming at me right now that yes, it is really terrifying I only have 3 lands. Kyle has 3 lands and a signet and then another one, right?
Yeah.
But here's where
because that chain of like the soul ring into the signet, you're like, oh my God. They can
get up and so far away. So here's where I would say I would be more interested in using them lately, and this is where I want them. I need my commander out as soon as possible, and they ain't 2 and 3 mana. They're like 4 and 5 and higher than that.
Yeah.
They're very safe to push to play as quick as possible. So I'm good to see them come out as quickly as possible. And they're not really like an alpha target for people, or there's something like Erebus. So like the one that floats to the top of my mind recently is Karanos, right? Like Karanos is just a really safe creature to get out into play as soon as possible from your command zone. And you got to start playing that stupid roulette with him anyway. The sooner the better.
Yeah, you need more.
He's an
hits.
indestructible enchantment that's 5 mana, and if he devotes, he's a 6/5. But you want him out soon.
Yeah.
So signets kind of help him get there. Like. I'm okay to have a larger volume of signetry there.
Yeah.
Or when I was playing Narset and Shiko, I can't go wrong with that commander. If I cast a signet and then a follow-up cantrip, they'll go, well, double draw, right? Or if I cast a signet and an aura, they'll go, well, double the aura. So even late game after they've already made their presence and I'm even firing, it feels a little smoother to have.
There's a lot
of
of situations where it fits, right?
So I went all in, right? I was like, I'm going to do all of them. I'll do the signets and the talismans and their cousins in this commander.
Yeah.
And it never felt terrible to draw them when I was behind or ahead or whatever combination of those things.
Because it fits.
Because the commander was like, non-creature spell. I'll do it. Non-creature spell. Like they're an effective non-creature spell.
And it feels good in those situations because it kind of cheapens your next spell after.
I value that highly. So Jory N, who's 3 mana, who is not out any sooner by a signet. There's not a version.
Get helped.
There's not a version of this game where she's out sooner by a signet, but it is a spell that I can throw mana back into and follow up with like a ponder or something stupid, and then she'll go, well, double spell, draw your card. So it's okay there. I guess. So that's where they make sense. Or my Council of the 4 thing, right? Like they got to be out. They got to stay out. They got to be out as soon as possible. They got to stay out. And they're going to get taxed. I got to cover that too.
Yeah, because a 5 mana commander,
I'm in a color identity that just doesn't afford me a way to do this on its own. I don't want to naturally land there on turn 5. I want to be up and above that with counter magic in hand, hopefully. So when I get them down, I can stick the landing.
Yeah.
That's where I value signetry play. And I wish there was another way around it, but like some high mana value commanders, they just they need that help. Some are just so good. The sooner they're out, the better. I mean, like to bring up the one we talked about earlier, that winter, the sooner he's down, the better. There's not a lot of risk.
Get to work.
Like just get him out, get him to work. It's an artifact.
Yeah.
Like whatever. Like I can see that working for you too,
Yeah.
So anyway, Liesa, one would think, is one of these commanders where it's like
5 mana.
Let's get her the fuck out so she can start hammering people's life totals down,
One would think.
And then she's going to go back to zone because they're going to want to put her back to zone.
Yeah, we have that experience. We know.
Let's pad it with more mana, you know?
Yeah.
So I started out thinking that was the fit. I'm like, I'm going to do the signet fit where the land count is, 38 and I'm leaning really hard on this ramp. But as I'm remembering how this chick goes, and how I'm remembering how this goes,
swap.
I'm just like, I don't actually think I want her out. So I moved to this version of the deck where I'm like, okay, so if I don't do that, and this is the thing that I think a lot of people kind of get chopped up with the signet argument is, okay, so if I don't do that, what do I do?
Yeah.
Well, do not keep your land count at 35. You should be at 38 and this large proportion of signets. And have a deck, I think, that supports this idea that I've kind of pushed across is my opinion lately. Okay, I'll change my mind. I'm sure. I don't know. Right?
Sure.
Brad does not agree with me on any of this. He is all in on getting his shit out as fast as possible, but that's his thing, you know? I have a Brotherhood's End waiting for him every time with it. Like, he just does it. That's the other piece I'm not even really bringing up, is that they're a vulnerable permanent type, you know, Bane of Progress, that kind of stuff. It wipes it out.
Yeah.
But I'm just talking about deck construction in that way.
Sure.
But what you should try to do instead, and this is something that's really hard, I think, to follow, at least for me, is, well, then you need to play on curve. You need to play on curve, right? Meaning you have a decent number of 1-drops, a decent number of 2-drops. And instead of using those slots for signets, it's land and something that brings value.
Yeah.
It's land and something that brings value. It's land and something that makes things a little tough for your opponents, that kind of thing. And for me, it's usually a creature. Like these are usually the things that should be making an appearance at these phases in the game. So you can get your chip damage in, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that's really hard to track, where they're 2 away from death because you hit them 3 times with a 2/2. You did 6 damage to them because all they could fucking do is produce a goddamn talisman in front of your silly little 2/1 that keeps attacking them.
Yeah.
It really adds up, you know? Like, it really does.
Yeah.
You never know where they're like, oh, I'm already dead. And it's like, because they were 10 behind everyone else because you were pushing them with these little creatures, you know?
Sure.
That there's so many good ones these days that do, you know, like, I don't know, Preacher of the Schism gives you a vampire, or if you have the most life, it draws you a card, and it's a death touch 2/3 for 3. So it's right in this range where these mana rocks and signets would be around.
Yeah.
And it converts itself into one hell of a blocker or a gotcha of like, well, it's death touch, I block. Oh, fuck, it is? Yeah. Stuff like that.
Yeah, totally.
You know? They are vulnerable, but yeah. So I'm just like trying to figure out like, okay, well, if I'm going to do this with her, because now I've kind of decided I don't want to ramp her out. There's not a reason to do it.
Well,
I'm not doing this.
And doubly, like you can't, like the ramping her out, it doesn't help. You have to pay the life in place of the tax. Right?
Yeah, you're right. You're true.
So
getting her out early is the only thing this does.
Not
for
even
us.
helpful long term.
Yeah,
right.
It allows me to pay even more life on the follow up spell, or do it before her. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, or get pained for casting them because I don't have anything else to do. So I guess my whole thing here is if you're thinking about your decks lately and you want to try something different, think about that idea of, is it a commander that's really, really, I got to keep them out at all times, or they're just the best component for a lot of, they relieve so much slot compression for me. I really want them out often, and they die, and I'll just recast them using the signets, and they hum along for me. I'm totally there. Like, I think there's a lot of signets, and they make a lot of sense in Zach's Sauron list, you know, because it's just the quicker Sauron's out, the quicker he can do the Sauron thing, you know. But there's other commanders where I just don't see it. I don't see why we're doing this, you know. If and then at the volumes I'm seeing it, right, where it's like I have 4 signets. I'm like, so it's fleetingly, you're not really going to get it when in the part of the game you want it, I guess.
Right.
So with her, I'm like, what am I going to do to curve through, and what matters? And at first I was like, okay, well, I'll do these pressure components and stacksy types of things. But I'm undefended for so long if I do this. Like,
yeah, because you don't want to block with your Campbell, like, even though it's a 2/3, like, you don't really want to block with them unless you fucking have to.
The promise of how much damage it'll do and how much life it will recover for you is just too high.
Yeah.
So this deck is absolutely set up to be more of a control deck. Yeah. My idea behind her is that I'm leaning on one keyword and one keyword only, and that's the fact that she has flying. There is some lifelink like matters here.
Sure.
But the idea is I curve through with 2 and 3 mana creatures. To my mind, in Orzhov, specifically black, some of the best 3 mana creatures that you can cast on turn 3 and turn 4, around when people have ramped their way to their nice, precious commander, is a fucking Fleshbag Marauder, and just drop their ass right in front of them, right? Like, they get out in front of you because that's what their deck is set up to do. They're ready to start doing their thing, and you pull the rug out right from under them with this tempo play.
Yeah.
Now, you know me also, like, I don't really like to leave it there. I'm not going to be like, okay,
let's do that again.
Just do it har because that won't, I want to keep doing it. Like, I want to keep on top of them.
Yeah.
For longer than just that. So I'm looking at this other deck that I was messing around with, and it was a version of her other version, weirdly, the one that like brings the creature back into your hand. So this is
the Forgotten Archangel.
The Forgotten Archangel. It's obvious what you're doing here if you show that commander. Like everyone's going to expect this is like, okay, so you're going to do...
Which we've also seen in our group, right?
Yeah.
Chris has done the Forgotten
Chris has done it, right? Yeah. I think with that commander, you really have to go all in. I don't think you can be really nice with how you're going to play with that commander. Because of the nature of the card and because she exiles things too.
Yeah, so it says if a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it.
She's really potent. Yeah. You know, I just don't know how you hide behind what you're doing with her in the command zone. Like where here it's looking like a pressure deck. She's an ominous presence, but the whole deck does not care about Liesa so much. Like it just really doesn't.
I'll just say like together. Up front, something like with what you're setting up, I've really liked putting commanders in this position of what you're starting to set up of like, I don't need them. They're nice. She's a great fucking body, right?
Yeah.
But
she's
like
a really good body. She's dangerously chic.
Yeah. Like a flying lifelink 5/5 that's doing some other shit to people. Like that's a really fucking good creature.
Well, and in Orzhov, this was my other thing, is that a lot of the stuff I will end up doing is not casting a spell.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing so much of the hurting myself.
So it's not ding, ding,
and
ding,
if she dies, I can leave her on the outside of this and reset it back up and then reintroduce her into it if I really need to.
Yeah.
So I felt like when I played the deck, there were games where I'm like, in my goldfishing, I'm like, I don't know, I got nothing to bet. A lot of the time I was like, I got nothing better to do. I'll put her out.
That's a cool place to be.
Where the rest of it was like, I don't really care about her right now, you know?
I like that.
So really the deck is set up to, you know, kind of establish a control base early, ruin people's timing a little bit, then maybe get her into play. They're going to get punished a little bit with the life total. They're going to think it's I think more of a pressure deck. I think that's what a stranger would think if they're playing against it.
Yeah.
They're going to think I'm going to lose a lot of life, and they are, but not from the vector that they thought they were going to do. You know, you're able to block a lot. A lot of these creatures will just stick down and you're like, okay, well, I'll drop this other one and block with my Cathar Commando and throw it back. But there's a clutch of cards that I think are pretty interesting to use in Orzhov specifically. If your commander has evasion, I count 8, maybe 9, maybe more, but the ones I selected are the following. So there's 2, 3, 4 that are pretty sick, I think, when it comes to this type of thing. The big one is Writ of Return. It's 5 mana for a sorcery. It says return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Cipher. So what is attractive about this is that it goes on her, and this is, what's unattractive is you're going to lose life because it's a spell when you cast it.
Sure.
Like you're going to lose 4, but you'll get the 5 back if she stays around. But it will recur one of these earlier creatures that were meant to be played on curve and shove it right underneath people again.
Mm-hmm.
It also can pull her out of the graveyard and be encoded right on her. She comes in tap, so she can't really hurry up and capitalize on it.
Sure.
But really, with a flying evasive commander and this card, it really reads 5 mana return 2 creatures to play. It's a victimize that recurs.
Without having to sack anything.
Without having to sack it. They do come in tapped, but yes. And then you can start doing this thing that, like, I think is kind of a little popular lately with that godforsaken Final Fantasy Mardu deck, which is Chain Reanimate, right?
Right.
So like the Writ of Return pulls the Karmic Guide, which pulls the Metamorphosis Fanatic, which pulls the Flesh Bag, and then it goes back.
Yeah.
Or you let the Flesh Bag drop the Metamorphosis Fanatic because then you swing with Writ of Return and bring the Metamorphosis Fanatic back and bring in a Sun Titan that pulls back the Flesh Bag. Like it's that kind of chain reaction of things that you can set up provided your commander clicks and connects.
Yeah.
The Guardian Scale Lord is an imitation of this, right? It has the backup. So it'll ETB. She gets a counter, so she's now a 6/6.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever this creature attacks, return target non-land permanent with mana value X or less from the graveyard to the battlefield, where X is this creature's power. Well, sure, she's at 6. That's everyone in the deck nearly.
I love backup.
So
it's probably one of my favorite
and
mechanics.
it has a cousin, the Archpriest of Shadows.
Yeah.
Same story. It backs up. This one gives her Death Touch, so she's Death Touch, Lifelink flying, and has that ability briefly to just recur something out of the yard.
Oof.
There's another because the mana curve is so low on this deck with these like those setup creatures, like the way I'm trying to like skip the Signet phase is kind of my aim here. Midnight Recovery, Necromantic Thirst, they bring them to hand, but they're low mana. Like
not a big deal.
Yeah, one could do sort of shadow, light and shadow if you wanted to do something a little bit more sticky that's not so easy for people to peel down. But it's kind of annoying because it gives them pro black and white, and then these other things show up.
Yeah.
This combined with something like Duelist Heritage, so now you're getting triple rid of returns. You're losing life, but like we're used to this with Reanimator anyway. Losing life for getting around mana costs, you know?
Yeah.
She's going to punish you for doing the thing.
Yeah.
But she's this omnipresent vehicle, not omnipresent, but pretty stiff upper lip vehicle to bring stuff back into play. And I just don't know if the opponent can get their arms around this too easily. Like, what do they go after? Do they go after Liesa? Sure, if these things are programmed in, but those are.
But the play is really elegant, right? Like, because if you get Liesa out, nobody deals with her on that cycle.
They're just losing life.
The backup play.
Yeah, they're just losing life.
Well, but the backup play, like, it's like, okay, I just needed her to get around to one combat for me to get this backup play going. And then I have
the backup.
Then I have the actual cards that has that real language in play, and she's still here. So what are you going to deal with?
Yeah.
It presents a really elegant problem for your opponents to solve.
Yeah, I like it because of that, and it's harder to read, I think, on the surface. Like if I showed up with Terra, the precon Terra, this is exactly what I would do with Terra. And Terra's even crazier. Like she'll do the mill, gain flying, and give you the creature as long as it's power 3. I can totally work, or I think that's what it is. I can totally work around that. And she's a good carrier of Writ of Return, Guardian Scale Lord, Archpriest of Shadows, backup abilities. Like she would do this way harder than Liesa would. Way, way, way harder. But everybody can see it from a mile away. Like that's what's going to happen.
True.
Where here, it's like Liesa in of itself is kind of a problem that people want to deal with.
But if they don't.
If they pursue that, I'm trying to give you a way to go after something else.
I like it. Yeah.
But if they don't pursue it, then she just hammers life totals a little bit and lowers them, and then
keeps yours up.
And keeps yours up a little bit. And then the big thing is that the I don't have anything else I can do but attack Andy or whoever decides to make
that
this
fucking
list.
goes away.
I've made it really difficult for your opponents to do this because you're managing creatures.
Yeah. Which I will say, she's an incredible blocker for that front as well, because where they're like, well, if I'm going to try and attack you, well, you have to remember, even if you have a bigger creature, I'm still going to gain 5.
Yeah. Yeah. Celestine the Living Saint, I think, works really great with her. It's flying lifelink 3/4 for 5 mana. Healing Tears. At the beginning of your end step, return target creature card with mana value X or less from the graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of life you've gained this turn. Normally, like, Celestine does the 3, but with Liesa, it's 5. So you have a Sun Titan style thing going on with, you're going to gain 5 life with that swing.
And combined
it's 8. Yeah. It's combined, it's 8. That's not the only recursion in this deck. There's 13 other ways to do it. Those are just the ones that were just strapped to that, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've got Liesa Jr. here too, because it kind of makes sense. They just go right back to hand and they cover us off. But yeah, Sister Hospitaller is here, Metamorphosis Fanatic is here, Sun Titan is here, Garment Guide is here, Redemption Choir is here, Grave Venerations is here, Brought Back is here, even if they try to blow all that up, I guess.
Those fucking 40k decks, dude.
Yeah, you should probably phase out, I guess, if you've got Cypher on her. It's going to be a pretty juicy target. But that card, Writ of Return, I mean, if you don't want to make this deck, dear listener, I totally understand. But if you have a black evasive commander in your command zone as we speak, I really think you should look into Writ of Return. Only because on its first thing, you're getting 2 creatures out of your graveyard.
Yeah.
And if no one can rally against that in time, you'll get more out of your graveyard.
Absolutely.
It's a great card.
So good.
It's a great card.
It's so good.
I don't even know if it's especially super here. But yes. That this is the focus of the deck. I don't think I need to go through the card.
Well,
I see what
you're doing, and I just want to add a comment, like, as we go through it, is that, like, I like that your selections meet this as well. Like, one of my favorite choices. It's such a highly used card, but it fits so well in a context like this, is the Fell Stinger, right? Where whatever you're up to, that recursion of like a, read the bones type spell on a creature you're going to get more bang for your buck out of it because of how the deck is constructed.
Yeah,
like there's an elegance to that.
You can Knight of the White Orchid on 2, Fell Stinger on 3, and have a really annoying blocker while people have only done Signets.
Right.
You know?
Or if you just do itself, you would just exploit
Knight of the
itself.
White Orchid on 2, then hit them on 3, then eat it with the creature,
stinger.
and then maybe you'll Sun Titan it later or something. I don't know. Like, it feels good here when you're doing this because the creatures, they're not thrown away even when there's board wipes and stuff like that. They can come back. They're meant to come back at often. Like they're meant to come back often. So it felt good playing it where I've got 41 lands.
Yeah.
And
which includes some MDFCs, but still.
Yes. Yeah. That's the other reason I think that these Signets I think have fallen a little behind in my mind is that you've got late game.
Yeah.
You've got late game cards and early game lands
in your MDFCs.
So if you're looking at this quadrant stuff, right? Hagra Mauling is it's pretty good in setup.
Yeah.
It's pretty good if I'm behind. I can just brick a creature. It's pretty good if I'm ahead. If I'm like, well, I just need to do one more damage, but there's one blocker, I can just Hagra Mauling it out of the way, and it covers a lot, right? These are why these cards are more expensive. They're very stapley.
The other thing that I like is that there's stuff. This speaks so well to cards like the Grave Lighter, where it can be one of your cards that's just like edicting people, but if something's already died, you're drawing cards off of it,
and it's a flying blocker.
And it's a flying blocker, so it just fits into really well into this kind of construction, like super well. The deck can start talking to itself really, really well. I like it.
What do you think compared to what we did before with it?
Yeah, I mean, the 2 different builds that I did, I think you're really addressing the problem that I had with the classic pressure slug thing, is that like there become too many things to spend your mana on, and it becomes difficult to piece together enough life loss to win the game.
And to stay alive and doing it.
Yeah, and I think this solves that. The other one, honestly, I didn't get to prove it out as much because I only got a couple plays with it before we did Ragnarok. My theory was that if I put out the anthems, it's a persistent way of getting her power up onto 7.
Yeah.
Up above 7. And then with the haste, that I could, no matter how many times you dealt with her, I was always going to bring her out. That's a commander damage build. Those are always a little harder to win with.
A million percent.
But I do think that piece set aside, I think that deck was a reasonable way to try and play the deck. This would feel more consistent in its capacity to win. And I like it. I like the approach you've said, especially if you're taking this to play with strangers, because she's going to kind of be this misdirection of like, oh, he's going to be playing pressure. Nope. And I like that.
Yeah.
I think it's fun.
In our play group, it wouldn't last very long. Like people would kind of get the idea pretty quick, but it's just something I was thinking about of what her other version of her is similar. I mean, in fact, I would say it's a straighter line.
More directly does it.
Of what I'm trying to do, but like everyone's going to see that. Terra, same thing. Like everyone's going to see it. Like
the other thing about Liesa the Forgotten Archangel is that people will counter, they're not counter playing, but they're decks that play
it's Graveyard Hate in the Zone.
Yeah, like if I got out the Glissa deck and you got out Liesa Forgotten Archangel, I'd put Glissa away because you just have a way in the zone to directly fuck me. So, people select around commanders like that. They won't do that with Shroud of Dusk.
This one was a fun one to twist around. I liked the idea behind it.
Yeah.
If you wanted some alternative commanders, if you're like, but I kind of want to build around what's going on. Yes, I would definitely look at that Mardu Terra of loading these cards in where it's like she's gonna do it twice over because she can already do it with her activated or her triggered or whatever.
Yeah.
But my thing here, at least the angle I'm coming from, is the deck can I think so. There's a list of Orzhov legends that I think are interesting to try instead of this one. One would be like, the Abigail Poet Laureate, right? It's just a 2/3 flying for 3. So it's a Sun Titan compliant commander in all of this. It carries a lot of these cards pretty well.
Yeah.
The power scaling and things like that won't work as well because Liesa's kind of like doing more work with that scale lore, doing more work with Celestine because of the life but this thing's out earlier. It just feels kind of weird to get this thing out in the middle of all of that, I guess. I don't know when you do it. But they are Sun Titan compliant. Tomic, Wielder of Law, is a 2/4 flying vigilance that has affinity for planeswalkers. I think you just ignore that. I think the only planeswalker you go for is the Gideon that gives you the emblem that says, if I control Gideon, I don't lose. That you can do him right away because you'll make it difficult for people to kill him.
Yeah.
And also he is himself Sun Titan compliant. I think that's the only planeswalker I'd be super interested in is this one. But it also has, whenever an opponent attacks with creatures, if 2 or more of those creatures are attacking you and or planeswalkers you control, that opponent loses 3 life and you draw a card. So it's a bit of a defense. Giving this thing Death Touch or something would be pretty interesting because it's a 2/4. But strapped with Sword of Light and Shadow or strapped with these cards that I've described, he's doing it earlier and he's vigilant, right? You could do Varric, Warped Sangir. I mean, it's a Vampire Nighthawk in the command zone.
True.
You could go after that twinning of the activated ability with paying life, which I think is actually pretty broken if you actually go after it. I don't know how much of that you would need to do if you're going to do this control reanimator thing that I'm suggesting. Zoraline gives you another crack at reanimating something, but it does have the finality counter. So
sure,
you either have to be comfortable with that or go, well, I've got so much redundancy, I can afford to lose some of these forever because of how effective they are.
Yeah.
Or just straight up Ravos and a partner or no partner. Ravos
is a little bit of a slow burn, but it works.
Yeah. Ravos is slow, but when you're doing what I'm doing here, where it's like, oh, he's flying and he's strapped with these effects that bring it back. So he'll get it at upkeep and on his combat. So you turned him into like a kind of a quasi Titan, I think.
That's pretty cool.
There.
I like that.
Or if things have just come apart and you haven't been able to draw those cards, then you've got them.
It's nice little upkeep backup pan.
Or at upkeep, I mean. Yeah. So there's alternatives. I don't think you need to go after Liesa, but
I will say, like,
she's hot.
She is. One of the most interesting games I think I had with Liesa was in the Anthems version.
Mm-hmm.
I had temporarily put the assault suit in the deck. And
wild. Yeah.
Cam he was playing his Crown and Kedis deck list that moves very fast.
Yeah.
And so I put the assault suit on Liesa and we just passed her around the table to push Cam out. I think that's probably partially why Cam
remember that, and everybody had a ton of life because
it's lifelink.
Yeah.
But it becomes this way of your life total doesn't matter because you're going to take commander damage from her. So
yeah, that might be smart even here, right? Like if you get some of these effects strapped to her and now she can't be edicted herself and she'll start pulling stuff out of the yard really quick into play. So I don't know.
That was an interesting game.
I'm on an arc, I think, with just kind of, I've gone back to, it's been difficult to set up engines in bracket 2.
Yes.
Our version of bracket 2, which is, no game changers, no tutors.
Which I will say, the Glissa list I produced, it has tutors, but they're bracket 2 compliant.
Yeah, but you can see, like, without them, like, a lot of these things don't hook up.
It's hard to piece together.
One of the things to soften that difficulty, I think, is, okay, well, I have this thing.
Yeah.
And at 5 mana, you'll always have her to a degree.
Yeah.
And so I just she is kind of a glaring target. I don't know. I didn't know what else to do with this chick, but I've always been fascinated with this legend. I love those
angels from that plane. And Liesa was kind of this, like, because she wasn't in the OG.
Yeah, we only we didn't just see her about her. Yeah.
And so, like, I was just like, oh my God, she's fucking here when she first came out. Like, I really wanted to build around her. But she's a peculiar legend.
Yeah. So that's the list. I think you could try with these other like lower MV versions, but there's some scalability with her that works a little better, like specifically that Celestine and the Scale Lord. Like that covers off your other like chain reanimator guys, because those guys are hard to get back into play off of some of those effects. Like,
that's true.
They're not going to follow the Sun Titan. He's kind of like in the middle.
Because they really tried to make sure that there weren't very many that you could do the Revelark
loop,
like they really try to control that. There's not too many pieces that can do that.
Yeah, like we've already got people strapping their commanders with sort of Hearth and Home, and that's their focus.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, well, let's just take it a little further.
I dig it.
And this isn't a color that very much likes to transition things from graveyard to play. Vito 2.0, you could try him. He has the sack thing. He's another flying 4. He's a flying 4/4 for 4, I think, or 4 something for 4. You know, that would work, I guess. I don't know. But she's just cool. I just wanted to take a run at that one.
I like that both you and I ended up doing graveyard centric builds.
Yeah, that's weird.
Kind of funny because we didn't preview.
Oh yeah, we didn't coordinate this little.
Yeah, it was like independently go do your work, and this is what we landed on.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of funny.
I actually did a few of yours. But then you're like, these are going to be too long. We don't want to do
I kind of felt like we'd have enough to talk about if we did one each. So
yeah. What's next?
I do think we're going to prepare a before you go. I'm not positive we'll have that be the next episode. I'd like to try to, but to our Tech Tutor tier Patreon supporters, we'll post a form so you can submit your decks for a few of the sets.
Yeah, essentially we go back through the sets and we submit, we get deck lists from our Patreon patronage to...
Yeah, Wizards of the Coast has an appetite to move at a breakneck speed to push product out. So we just want to take that as an opportunity to be like, hey, remember there was some cool shit.
It wasn't even a year ago. So we kind of revisit some of that, and hopefully like people have played the decks and have some experience and can speak from that space.
Yeah.
But we used to do them every set, but then the sets went from...
Yeah, it made it so we were basically doing before you go and reviews.
Yeah, so it just now we just kind of do them and
do batches.
Yeah. So that we should do. Yeah, because it's been a minute, huh?
Yeah.
Cool.